Welcome back to Science versus Conspiracy over coffee. I'm your co-host, Conspiracy.
And I'm Science.
Welcome back to the show. Do clones walk among us? We'll find out in a few moments. But first, we have some coffee we want to talk about.
What are we drinking today?
Is it Paradise Mountain?
It is Paradise Mountain. And it's a super yummy, and they claim to be the world's most sustainable coffee. It's 100% organic. Now, this one that we happen to have is the Estate Blend. And this is a medium roast. Well, it's medium dark, I guess. Mm-hmm. And it's got some flower aromas, and they say it has hints of mocha, citrus, and berries. This is not an ad, but I really like it.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it too. So we have to definitely get this one again.
So yeah, Paradise Mountain, which actually comes ethically sourced and transported from Thailand.
Excellent. All right, well, let's get into it now. Brew some coffee, pull up a chair, and open your mind, because today on Science versus Conspiracy over coffee, we will be discussing human cloning over coffee. We'll be right back.
Hey, Bob.
Yes, Jen?
Did you realize we're already into June?
Oh, wow. So Canada Day is fast approaching.
Yeah, but lots of cities are choosing not to celebrate. But you can still honor our home country with a special coin collection from the Canadian Mint.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a special 5-coin set that has special images on the loonie. There's a moose and a maple leaf. It's an expression of love for Canada that makes a great gift and collectible keepsake that your loved ones will treasure for years to come. Check out the link in our show notes for more information.
All right, welcome back. So before we actually get into human cloning, there's a number of cloning processes that are available to scientists. Science, do you want to review some of those? Go over them?
Sure. So one thing I want to make really clear at the beginning here, folks, I'm not a geneticist or a microbiologist or a lab researcher. So my understanding of this, just because I can understand the scientific terminology, is still very rudimentary. But having said that, if you've seen the really funny and interesting series called Living with Yourself, starring Paul Rudd, well, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but cloning is a little bit more difficult than how they portray it in the show.
It's not done in a strip mall?
It is not done in a strip mall.
I just always pictured, like, if they just panned down the mall a little bit, Better Call Saul would be, like, right there, too.
Yeah, and, you know, some of these people that would go visit Saul might want to go to the happy spa afterwards. But also vice versa. If something happens like it does to Paul Rudd, they might want to go see Saul. If you have no idea what we're talking about, go watch the show. We'll put a link in the description, I think. Anyway, so as you were saying, you're right. There's different types of cloning. Mm-hmm. Now, again, I'm not an expert, but essentially to simplify it, there's genetic cloning. They're all gene cloning, but reproductive cloning and therapeutic cloning. Okay, so the difference is gene cloning, genetic cloning, is just copies of segments or genes of someone's DNA or an animal's DNA. Mm-hmm. So it's not the entire entity of what constitutes that being. It's just a segment, okay? Reproductive cloning seeks to replicate the entire entity. And essentially, that's what naturally occurs when you have identical twins.
Right.
Okay?
Right. So cloning is actually a thing. Cloning humans in that sense.
In that sense, it is. It's unintentional human cloning.
Right.
Yeah. And then therapeutic cloning is when in a laboratory they produce what's called embryonic. So think of embryo when a baby is being created. An embryonic stem cell that's used for experiments, and they use these to replace injured or diseased tissues. So as you can see, the different types of cloning are very differently tailored to the outcome. Okay, very different purposes.
So under Canadian law, under the AHR Act, it is illegal to knowingly create a human clone regardless of its purpose, including therapeutic and reproductive cloning. Cloning has also been banned in over 30 countries, including France, Germany, and the Russian Federation. 15 countries, such as Japan, the United Kingdom, and Israel, have banned human reproductive cloning but permits therapeutic cloning. Let's go back to 1996 when they created the first animal clone, Dolly the sheep. And that was like the first official animal that was ever cloned. Since then, there's been many different types of animals, from cows to cats and dogs and others.
Yeah.
However, it is a huge leap, a huge technical leap from cloning animals to primates.
Exactly. And that's why it's not caught on. But I'll let you continue there.
So one of the reasons is that there's two proteins essential to cell division, known as spindle proteins, and they're located very close to the chromosomes in primate eggs, right?
That's right.
Yeah, see, I know science. The removal of the eggs.
Okay, whoa. You got to back up here. You got to tell people the method.
Okay.
Okay.
Why don't you tell me?
Because for people to understand what this problem is when you're talking about removing and the spindle proteins, you got to understand the process. Okay. So the method is that the DNA of the donor animal or the donor entity, whatever it may be, it has their DNA containing nucleus removed and given to the recipient. Okay, which
Right.
will be the clone.
Okay.
Now there's two different ways that this recipient can receive this DNA from the original. And for one, and the most, I guess, sought after method is that what they have to do first is remove the DNA nucleus from the recipient first, so that the egg is empty. So they have an egg, they remove the nucleus of that egg, and they insert the new nucleus from the donor. Okay?
Right.
So,
Well said.
okay. And then the
Better
other...
than I could do. Better than I do.
Oh yeah, no worries. And then the other episode, or the other instance, I should say, is that they fuse the entire cell instead of removing just the nucleus, and they fuse it electronically with the empty egg. But so then, now that you understand, like, you have to remove the nucleus, and so that problem is that, as you said, these spindle proteins are like really, they're closely located to the chromosomes. And so with these removals, cell division is interrupted.
Exactly. And in other animals other than primates, it's located in a different area, which makes it a lot easier for the cell division to occur after the fact, and replacing that the nuclei.
Exactly. And that's why initial work, when they first started trying to do it, the fused cells or inserted cells, they were never surviving long enough, like 5 or 6 days. So that's why, like, early research was really struggling to master this, because it's such a very difficult method, fraught with difficulty, or fraught with problems, right? Potential problems.
Exactly.
They have to use UV light and dye to see the egg's nucleus for this extraction and insertion. And they've found that those dyes and UV light, although they're safe on their own, and they would be safe in the process, it's just, these things are incredibly fragile. I mean, we're talking microscopic, right? So these things are so incredibly fragile that sometimes the UV light and the dyes can also damage and cause issues with the cell's nucleus.
Right.
And so part of the problem that's happened then, not only is there, sometimes failure to fuse, but when it does survive, there can be birth defects, things that you don't even realize until much, much later. Problems with vital organs, the immune system. And interestingly, I don't know if you were going to get to this, but one of the things that happened to Dolly was because of the embryonic cells that they took to create Dolly, those were from a sheep that was already like 6 years old or something.
Right.
So those cells are already 6 years old. The telomeres on those cells, the telomeres are at the end of your chromosome spindles, and they essentially, those are what tell you how long you're going to live. They like predict your longevity.
Okay.
They predict your lifespan. And so those are already shortened. And when telomeres get shortened, that happens to us, from aging, toxicity, like all kinds of reasons. But so what was happening, Dolly had a much shortened lifespan because her telomeres were already prematurely aged for the rest of her body.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's lots of problems that can happen.
So she was actually born as like a 6-year-old sheep.
I mean, kind of, yeah.
In a way.
In an infant sheep's body, right? But as you said, all these problems have not prevented people from trying.
They have not. So back in 1998, just a couple of years after Dolly, a Korean scientist claimed to have created the first human cloned embryo, but said that the experiment was interrupted when the clone was just a couple of grouped of 4 cells. Then, in 2002, a religious group believes that the first humans were created by extraterrestrials, and they held a news conference to announce the birth of what it claimed to be the first cloned human, a girl named Eve. Reminds me of the X-Files episode.
Yeah.
However, despite repeated requests by researchers and the news, they weren't able to provide any evidence to confirm the existence of this clone or any other of the 12 human clones that were reportedly created.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's one big glaring red flag that things are being faked or fudged, because one of the hallmarks of science is replicability. This is why we have peer-reviewed journals in which scientists put out lengthy descriptions of their methodology, because replicability is absolutely vital, because not only does it prove to people that, if you follow these steps, you should be able to get the same results I did, which means that I actually did what I said I did, and that it was effective, whatever. But it also allows people to carry on with the work, carry on with the research, and, maybe even make it better, alter it, etc.
Exactly.
So if they're not publishing, if they're not allowing people to independently assess these, and they're not even showing them, supposedly they wanted to protect the babies and their families' privacy. But if you don't want to at least introduce us to the baby, publish your research.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of red flags for those couple of cases, and then there's another one.
And not only that, but the fact that they said it came from extraterrestrials and they were a religious cult named the Raelians. Yeah. That's a huge red flag too.
Well, that's got nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Okay. But like you said, X-Files type stuff.
X-Files. Well, the character in the X-Files was actually named Eve too, right?
Well, yeah. So, I think that episode of the X-Files actually came out before.
It would have been before.
It came out before because, they first started, this group, the Raelians, first started talking about it in 97. So I couldn't remember what year the Eve episode was.
93.
Ah, yeah, okay. So,
December 10th, 1993.
Yeah. Brilliant episode if you guys haven't seen it. One of my favorites. Absolutely fantastic. But regardless,
So the same thing in 2004 and 2006. There's a lot going on over in South Korea because all these seem to be coming out of South Korea. But I don't think that has any relation to that's where clones are coming from or not. But what if human cloning isn't just science fiction? What if scientists already have the technology to do this? What if cloning technology is alive and well throughout the shadow government?
Okay, well, hold on a second now.
Yeah.
Before we move on to that, the '04 South Korean work has been exposed to be completely fraudulent.
But with any of these exposed to be completely fraudulent stuff, anything can be manipulated. We've talked about that before with AI and deep fakes and that sort of thing. Anything can be proven that it doesn't exist or that it's been falsified and covered up. So I'll take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. But also, like I always say, rely on the facts. Like Dolly, they took 276 attempts to create one Dolly.
Could just went down to Home Depot
to get a Dolly.
to get a Dolly.
Ba-boom. He'll be here all week, folks. But with the, never mind the ethical and moral issues, it's inefficient and ineffective to even pursue human cloning because of, like I was saying, about all those birth defects, etc.
But what if they were able to overcome those?
But they haven't yet. And in fact, what they've shown is that it's actually more effective to alter segments of genes and change the coding, although there's obviously, ethical and moral issues related to that as well. But, we're talking about like stem cell modification for diseases, right? So the stem cell work is much more, I think, promising without all these horrific side effects that would come with potential reproductive cloning.
But what if it's done for a very specific purpose and the people who signed off on these particular clones aren't necessarily concerned about birth defects or the longevity of the clone?
Well, oh my God, they should be. They should be concerned about the birth defects. And, even stem cell research, currently scientists are still exercising caution because stem cells have a lot in common with cancer cells. So they are being extra cautious in the research that, stem cells can actually accumulate the kinds of mutations because of the way that the cells replicate and divide, just like cancer cells, that could lead to cancer.
But what if they're not
But what if they're not?
But what if they're not concerned about this? Like,
who wouldn't be?
Who wouldn't be? The people that are trying to control and rule the world in secret, that are the people behind the curtain.
Okay, but if the world's best scientists haven't been able to publicly come out and say, look at how amazingly we've done in cloning or genetic cloning, never mind reproductive cloning, just genes or therapeutic cloning. If that hasn't been possible yet, what makes you think it's happening behind the curtain?
Because there's where there's money, there's a will and there's a way, and people are paid to keep their mouths shut.
Yeah, but also like we've seen, whistleblowers. People are always, although things may be covered up for a while, everybody talks at some point. So I mean,
well, it might come out at some point in the future that back in the early 2020s we've had human clones walking around of politicians.
I think that's the stuff of science fiction. When you have to see the scientific nuances, like it's highly unlikely that this is going on because of how difficult it is.
Well, there's a small but growing number of people on Twitter and
Oh dear,
I know,
Twitter.
and other
Oh
places
dear.
that are convinced that
Of course they are.
that President Joe Biden is not President Joe Biden.
Oh, of course. Well, I mean, they say that about all kinds of people. We've had different people, even people were claiming that Dolly wasn't really Dolly.
Mm-hmm.
You know? There's a conspiracy theory for you back in your face.
Well, they're pointing to a couple of specific points. They keep pointing out his ears, his earlobes specifically, because they show like back-to-back images of Joe Biden prior to 2019 and then Joe Biden after 2019, and his earlobes don't match up, and his forehead doesn't match up, and the structure of his
aging.
face.
It's called aging.
Yes, to a degree, and he's obviously had yeah, and he's obviously had some work done on his face. But they contend that it is a clone or a facsimile of Joe Biden, because and that would also explain his declining mental capacity, that they're blaming it on the clone technology. And this is
Well, there's those telomeres, right?
Yeah.
If he is a clone, that would be why.
Yeah. And there's this video of supposedly his granddaughter floating around, and she said that in this video that my grandfather died in 2019 and his twin brother has taken over the presidential responsibilities. Joe Biden does have a twin brother, but he doesn't look exactly. It's not. He couldn't. I don't think he could pass as Joe Biden.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So take it with a grain of salt. Here's another story. If you're not buying that one.
Uh-huh.
So back in 2012, and for those of you who don't know or don't remember, the 2012 Benghazi attack was a coordinated attack against 2 United States government facilities in Benghazi, Libya, by members of an Islamic military group. At 9:40 p.m. local time, an American diplomatic compound in Benghazi was the target of the attack, resulting in the death of both American ambassadors to Libya and Foreign Service Information Management officers. Over the years, it has come out and people are blaming Hillary Clinton for being responsible for these attacks. But what I found interesting back in 2012 was she kind of disappeared for a little while.
Oh, are you actually getting to the point now?
Yes, I am actually getting to the point now. I want to give people some context if they weren't familiar with Benghazi.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
After the attack, okay, so Hillary Clinton was, by all official accounts, nowhere near Benghazi. However, she kind of disappeared from the public view for a little while, claiming that she was in the hospital for a stomach virus and then a blood clot in her head just after the attack.
Okay.
So then when she did make her appearance again, she was different. So one of the theories is that she was in Benghazi and she was part of the attack, and she was either severely injured or even killed. So they had to quickly do something.
Okay, but you can't grow a human that quickly. So this cloning thing is
How do you know?
redonkulous.
Well, okay, so
It takes time for bones to grow.
but if they we're taking a big leap here
Bones.
anyways.
We're
taking a leap here anyways. So if they do have this technology, they probably have the technology to enhance and grow and speed up the process.
No, because the bone matrix
Mm-hmm.
inside is so delicate, and It's like a tree.
Mm-hmm.
You can't speed grow a tree because of, see how the rings, like they need to build the structure from the inside out.
Like a 3D printer.
Cricket, cricket, cricket. Okay, I got nothing.
Exactly.
But still.
But if they could 3D print, in a sense, a clone of anybody that they want to, especially world leaders, they don't have to live forever. They don't have to live very long at all. They could have like a short 2-month time span, and then while they're printing out another one to carry on. And
no, because it also takes, I mean, even if you think of it, even if you could create the bone, for example,
yeah,
and the organs,
yeah, which they can do with 3D printing.
Sure, but you cannot expedite learning to walk and talk. You can't. It takes time.
It does, but neural transmission.
But neural transfer, even if that were a thing, you still cannot, like, you have to, have you seen stroke patients and people who have to learn their words all over again? It takes time. It takes time for babies to learn how to walk. Babies don't learn to crawl until they're 7 months. A lot don't stand until they're 10. A lot of them don't walk until they're over a year.
Have you seen Joe Biden lately?
Boom. And that's the sound of him falling down. I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on this one.
Right. And
this is not Attack of the Clones, which was also bad.
That was the worst name for a film.
Oh my God.
But I was also thinking, like, with Joe Biden, it's more like the Manning clone in Kimmy Schmidt.
Oh, in Kimmy Schmidt?
Yeah, the Tioga.
If you haven't seen The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, we've referenced it before. And they make a clone of Peyton Manning.
Eli Manning.
Oh, Eli Manning.
Yeah.
That's right. Sorry.
Tioga. All right, well, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree on this one.
I think so. I mean, obviously, the whole topic we didn't really talk about religious and moral consequences. It bears heavily on those considerations in society. But I think that there's a lot of good that could come as with stem cell research. But we definitely have to think about the unintended consequences as well.
Exactly. All right, so that's it for this week. I'm your co-host. Nope.
I should start first.
Okay,
because
go
I'm
ahead.
science, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess that's it for this week then. I don't know. What do you folks think? Have you encountered anything that makes you wonder, what about cloning? I don't know. I'm science, and I say stay curious, but rely on the facts.
And I'm conspiracy, and remember, being paranoid is smart. We'll see you next time.
Are you looking for a unique yet sure to please gift for the father figure in your life for Father's Day? Driftaway Coffee combines delicious coffee with sustainability. They ensure bean-to-bean support of small farmers and eco-friendly packaging. Their 3-month coffee subscription is on sale now for just $54 with free shipping in the continental United States. It's coffee that's good for you, and good for the planet. See the link in our show notes.
This episode of Science vs. Conspiracy Over Coffee was produced by Story Monkey Productions.